This is Faith Under Fire from Family Life News. We rewind and bring you not so much the greatest hits of the year, but a sampling of the kinds of issues that we've covered each Thursday on Family Life News. We have had several topics that have come up again and again. We'll sample those here in this special feature, but also look at some of the unique angles that we've covered on Faith Under Fire. One issue that we've come to again and again throughout the year is the question of gender identity and gender transitions and how that affects women's sports and girls' locker rooms and restrooms. We were grateful to talk with Riley Gaines, who is one of the most prominent national spokespeople on the issue, but we also got a local angle from the president of Houghton University, an NCAA sports school that's dealing with regulations brought about by their athletic competitions while also holding to traditional conservative Christian values.
Houghton University is an institution. We're a Christ-centered institution. We assign students to residence halls and participation in any sex-segregated activities based on their biological sex. Students at Houghton University compete on athletics teams based on their biological sex. That is not changing. That, however, does not cover what it looks like in collegiate competition. We have had young women who compete against biological males. We have decided we're going to advocate for change in NCAA policy. As far as young women on our campus, they do have the ability to opt out of competition, competing against biological males.
One of the privileges we have with Family Life News is to talk with experts who give some perspectives on how to enhance your life individually and as a household. Jared Lopes is the organizer of a group called Dad Tired. That sure sounds like it's a play on word of the phrase dead tired.
That's one of the most good unintentional things that I've probably ever done, is titling it Dad Tired. That was a total accident. I actually was going through a really rough season in my own life and marriage. My wife and I were on the brink of divorce. There was this season where I was really detached as a husband and a dad. And my wife, I didn't know this, but we were in the middle of a fight, and she paused and she had tears in her eyes. And she said, "Jared, I just want you to know that I've been waking up at 2 a.m. every morning, and I've been going into the living room and I've been getting on my face and I've been begging God to capture your heart again." It reminded me of the verse in Romans that says it's his kindness that leads us to repentance. And it was the kindness of my wife. It was the kindness of God through my wife that really, for the first time in a long time, led me to repentance, to soften my heart and to come back to him. Guys who have healed souls. And those guys are the ones who have a group of brothers around them who they're confessing sin often to. They're praying with each other. They're being the kind of brothers that know everything about them and love them fully.
Is that camaraderie something that seems to be missing more often than not?
Most men would not say that they are lonely. And yet in my conversations with men, even if they're not using the words, what they're actually describing is loneliness. I think that we need to have this call again to say, brother, you cannot do this alone. And that does not mean you're weak. You are weak either way, whether you try to do it alone or not. What you need is to admit your brokenness, come find other brothers, and do this thing together.
We talked with a campus pastor at Altoona, Pennsylvania, who gave us some perspectives on the spiritual challenges and the spiritual openness for the younger generation.
Specifically on the campus, all students really get a bad rap. I talk with numerous people from churches and even administrators, and they all just make the assumption that students do not have any spiritual life. But what I think they're missing is I'm seeing a lot of students who are willing to give faith a chance. Maybe not completely dive into it, but they're willing to give it a chance and see, maybe we can actually have a conversation about it and see what this is about and see what you guys are about.
On this special edition of Faith Under Fire, we're recalling some of the interviews that we've had throughout the past year. One of the issues we covered was a local Christian university that closed its doors, Clark Summit University. We talked with people there. The issue of campuses closing is not unique to that one place, but is a part of what's happening in Christian and secular schools. Christian journalist Warren Smith at Ministry Watch.
Well, what happened in your neck of the woods, Greg, with Clark Summit is unfortunately kind of the trend. In general, there are kind of a triple whammy, a perfect storm of issues that are facing Christian colleges right now. Number one is that there are simply fewer college-aged students now than there have been in generations past. We're having fewer babies as a culture. That's having a significant impact on colleges and universities. A lot of folks are moving to online. There's been some question about the value of a college education, especially when you consider the spiraling costs. And a lot of families and individuals are just deciding that it's not worth it anymore. They're looking for other alternatives, trade schools and whatnot. So the bottom line is a lot of colleges are shutting down or in financial trouble. We looked in our research, looked to an organization called Higher Ed Dive. That's an organization that does deep dives into the higher education market. And they say that at least 116 colleges have shut down since 2016. That's a lot of schools, and it's probably just the tip of the iceberg.
What is the prescription for Christian schools these days to maybe learn from some of those places that are succeeding by finding a niche and really doing a great job of promoting and recruiting?
The ones that are succeeding seem to be really focusing their programs, and they're also focusing in areas that might be considered non-traditional for Christian schools. A lot of creativity, I think, is going to be necessary. I think one of the things that I think the Christian community at large is going to have to face is they're going to have to ask the question, do we really want Christian higher education? Is it important to the church? My answer to that question is yes, and that's why we've been covering this. But I think the evangelical church has to answer that question in a broader way. We're going to have to support Bible-believing evangelical colleges so that we can get the tuition costs down to a level that makes sense for middle-class families. Otherwise, we're just going to see this trend continue.
And one last stop on our tour of 2024 interviews, some encouraging news for Christian churches. I interviewed Allison Norton of the Hartford Institute, who started a 5-year study of congregational health and vitality just as the COVID era began. Partway through that 5-year study, we're finding that a lot of congregations are recuperating and starting fresh, finding some bounce back in worship attendance, volunteer participation, and finances. One of the big differences on whether congregations are doing better or not, whether they're really relying on people who never write checks for anything else to write a check to support their congregation.
As we've seen churches shift to online giving, we've seen their giving go up. This is a trend we've seen in our research for more than 20 years. When congregations emphasize or include online giving, their per capita giving goes up. So many churches have benefited from shifting to online forms of giving.
Is there a one-size-fits-all answer to, are we fully recovered? Are we mostly recovered? Are we partly recovered? What is your research telling us?
What we see is really a mixed message. And I think the largest takeaway from our study is that the landscape is unsettled and churches continue to respond to new questions that emerge about, for example, how to do virtual worship, how to create a sense of commitment and community among virtual-only attenders who may feel more like spectators than committed, involved participants. Some churches doing well, responding creatively and innovatively, being experimental, and other churches that people are tired of this process of change and innovation and just want to go back to the way that things were.
Faith Under Fire is a part of our Family Life Noon Report each Thursday. You'll also hear highlights at our 5 o'clock report and other newscasts in the morning and afternoon. We also offer a podcast version at familylife.org and the Family Life Now mobile app. If you were intrigued by any of these samples we gave you on this edition, you can find all of our Faith Under Fire archives on our webpage. I'm Greg Gillispie, Family Life News.
Thank you for listening to this Family Life News podcast. If you've been encouraged by what you've heard, please share it with others and click the subscribe button to automatically receive future episodes. Family Life is a listener-supported ministry. Podcasts like this are made possible by your financial partnership. Find out more at familylife.org.